Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1996 Disney animated film, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to John for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you'd like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Hunchback of Notre Dame is one of those Disney Renaissance animated films from this time period that I didn't really grow up with compared to other people. I definitely was aware of it. I remember it being advertised when I was a kid. I remember a tie-in with was it Burger King? It was some kind of, or McDonald's. Like, I remember a fast food tie-in for this film. And I remember, maybe seeing a TV spot or something on TV. I don't think I ever saw it in the theater. I do remember seeing it at least once, probably on VHS, but other than that, I don't really have a lot of recollections of this film when it comes to my childhood. So when it was time for me to watch the film for the first time in forever, it was like watching it with new eyes. It really was. It was a very interesting experience because I really didn't have any memories of it, let alone fond ones, because I didn't have any memories to begin with. And I got to be honest, I really liked this film. I thought this film was really good. That was a really solid uh, animated movie. Now, despite the fact that I think it's a solid film, I do feel that it's a bit disappointing because there was some extra potential that I feel this film did not fully realize, and that's why this movie is just a movie that I think is really good and I like, but I don't love the entirety of it compared to some of the other Disney films. But at the same time, there are certain elements of this movie that I would definitely say are some of my favorites when it comes to Disney's animation and their animated films. So it's a film that I'm a bit conflicted on, to be honest. Like, there are things about this that I love and are just things that I absolutely adore. But then there's other elements of it that I definitely do not have the same feelings for, so to speak. It's directed by Gary Trousdale and Kirk Wise, and I think the two of them collaborated together really well. They had a good chemistry. They seem to have a very unified idea of what their vision is for the film. And for a movie that takes place a lot in a cathedral, it never really feels like it's that confining of a film visually. There are different parts of Paris that are showcased, like the catacombs and some other bits and pieces, but a lot of the film is very much taking place inside this cathedral, which is Quasimodo's home, so it makes sense. But I think with lesser directors, you could have a film that feels a bit too cramped, that really doesn't have a good variety of camera work or movement to it, and that never really happens here with this film. In fact, there's some really impressive and just genuinely incredible bits of direction for an animated film in this, in terms of the camera work. And a lot of it has to do with scenes involving motion. Like, I really feel that the sequences that involve a lot of movement are really terrific. And it's a film that has some moments visually that are haunting, but at the same time mesmerizing. And there's also some beautiful sequences. And I really feel the animation in these scenes is allowed to shine as brightly as it does because of the work by these two directors. They know how to really make certain certain shots really stand out, and to provide them with the opportunity to do so and not get drowned out by other stuff or other noise. And yeah, it's a really incredible film from a directorial standpoint. I really do feel that this is one of the best directed animated films from Disney. I genuinely do feel that way. The screenplay by Tab Murphy, Irene Mecci, Bob Sudeker, Noni White, and Jonathan Roberts. I think Tab Murphy did the majority of the writing, but the rest of those folks also contributed as well, because the story was by Tab Murphy, and it's based on the novel The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. But there are some clear differences here. Not only the tone, I mean, the film is definitely a lot lighter tone-wise than the novel, but also Quasimodo himself. For instance, Quasimodo in the novel is more of an older man. Here, he's in his 20s. He's a more youthful figure. And I think that was honestly a really interesting and a genuinely inspired choice by the writers to work with Quasimodo in that way. Also, Quasimodo is more of the focus here. And I know initially they were thinking about maybe doing something a little bit different, but they decided not to go that direction. So instead of having Quasimodo be this kind of figure that's kind of floating in and around the fringes, he is the star of the story. And I mentioned that it has a lighter tone, and it does, but surprisingly enough, it still has some of those darker elements of the original novel. The Hellfire sequence, which I absolutely love, that is, I mean, that is an awesome sequence. From the music to the voice acting to the way that it's written, it's just an incredible, just tremendous sequence. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to some elements of this film being some of my favorite when it comes to the entirety of Disney animation. That sequence is one of my favorite scenes in a Disney film. And there are other sequences in the film that are on that level, like the finale at the cathedral, and Quasimodo saving Esmeralda, uh, saving the girl, and then him going up against his master, and that is just a really terrific and thrilling finale. And the Festival of Fools is another scene that I really like. So there's a lot of things about this film that I really love when it comes to this story. And I think even the ending works. Like initially, when I first saw the film as a child, um, I said that I didn't really have a lot of memories of the film, and I really didn't. But now that I think about it, I think I did remember not liking the ending. And as an adult, even after revisiting the film, I was conflicted on the ending. But then I thought about it some more, and then I'm like, you know what? I actually like the ending. I like the way that it ends because it really helps the film stand out among these other Disney films at the time. It doesn't end with the hero getting the girl. It ends in a more realistic kind of fashion, and it fits with the tone of the film. I know the initial idea for the ending was to be like the book, where Quasimodo dies and Esmeralda kills Frollo, but they decided not to go that direction, and I appreciate that. But they still kept that original concept for the ending, and I think that's divisive for some people. But I think within the context of this film, I think it works because I don't think it really was about Quasimodo finding the love of his life in Esmeralda. It was really about Quasimodo finding freedom, finding a place where he can be accepted and loved in the future by some other woman or just by other people around him, instead of being considered an outcast and a freak. And I think that's really what the core message of the film is. And I think if he got together with Esmeralda, it would just make things a little bit more cliched, and it just, I don't think it would have worked as well as what they ultimately went with. That being said, I feel Esmeralda getting with Thebes, that in theory isn't necessarily a bad idea. I just don't think it's executed as well. I feel there isn't enough moments where they fall for one another that it makes it something that feels genuine. So it feels a bit too forced. And like the only time where it seems like they have any romantic feelings for each other is that one scene where Thebes is being taken care of by Quasimodo, and then Esmeralda kisses him. But when you look at that scene, even that scene comes across a bit forced, and it's just kind of there to create the tension and the drama where Quasimodo realizes that, oh, she never really loved him, and he's not gonna have that magic connection with her, and so on and so forth. So I feel there should have been like another scene before that with the two of them where it showed a little bit more romantic chemistry. Like you see like glimpses of it, but it's not strong enough to really make you think that, oh, they're meant for one another or they are really falling for each other. It didn't really, you didn't really get that vibe. So it really just made the whole connection between the two very hollow, which I think is why when Quasimodo is essentially friend zoned at the end, I think that's why it's so divisive for people, is because they see more of a bond or some romantic chemistry with Quasimodo and Esmeralda than they do with Esmeralda and Thebes. Um, and that's not the only problem with the story. And I'll get to that pretty soon. But I want to talk about another really excellent aspect of this script, and that is everything involving Frollo. Like Frollo is intimidating. Frollo is downright terrifying. Frollo is a revelation. Like Frollo, honestly, is probably my favorite Disney villain. Like he's just unabashedly just corrupt and evil, and in a way that is more realistic and not so mustache twirling compared to some of these other Disney villains. And that's what makes it all the more compelling. And the whole thing with him initially trying to kill this abomination that he feels Quasimodo is when he was a child, only to have essentially be forced to adopt this baby by the church, and this whole connection that ultimately forms between him and Quasimodo, where he plays the father, is so manipulative and devious, and then the scene where he's conflicted and he's talking about the hellfire, and he's talking about how if Esmeralda doesn't want me and doesn't choose me because he has romantic feelings for her, then she's going to burn in hell. Like that's some pretty intense stuff, and it just fits so well with this just unbridled intensity that the character is given by the screenwriters. And so when he's burning then pretty much half of Paris down trying to get Esmeralda, like it is some hellish stuff. And the finale, the confrontation between him and Quasimodo for the final time, complete with him essentially getting thrown into the pits of hell. Like it's a really just amazing bit of writing when it comes to a Disney film. It's very dark and very refreshingly dark. And there's some other dark humor. Like there's this guy who he's a prisoner, he gets released, and then immediately he gets put back into like I forgot what the name of it is, but he gets released from this cage, and then immediately he's put in another cage of sorts. Where now is and then he gets released again, and then he falls into a sewer. And the guy, like, that is some pretty dark humor that you don't necessarily expect out of a Disney film. And there's some other stuff involving Esmeralda, in terms of some of the dark humor that's also pretty effective. And speaking of Esmeralda, I love the way that that character is written too. That is how you write a strong female character, but in a way that's not uh, being shoved down your throat, in a way that's actually authentic, in a way that isn't like at all forced and unbelievable. Like, she's a badass. She can hold her own. That whole scene at the Festival of Fools where she's outwitting Frollo and his men. That's top tier stuff when it comes to writing a female character in anything, not just an animated film. And you would think with all those elements, including Quasimodo, because I like the way that Quasimodo is written too. His want to be included and be a part of the world outside, and his loneliness and his isolation. Like, those are all things that I connect with, and I definitely feel for him on a deeper level because of that, and it really makes me root for him in the end. And I was upset initially because he didn't get her, because of the fact that I connected with him, as somebody who feels like they're alone on a bell tower sometimes by themselves, or maybe is considered an outcast. So that was a bit disappointing. But then when I thought about it some more, I'm like, no, this fits, because it's all about him being accepted by the world as a whole, and him having the ability to step outside of the cathedral and step outside from the bell tower and into the world, and do so without shame and fear and being ostracized from society. So I think that's really a much greater win in the end for Quasimodo. But what's not a win when it comes to the script and the story is its sense of humor, other than the little bits of dark comedy and maybe like a couple lines from Thebes. Other than that, a lot of the humor is painful and not funny, and just pandering to either the lowest common denominator, like armpit farts and burping, or it's just really lazy. And it involves all the scenes with the gargoyles. The gargoyles, period, are the weakest parts of this film. They stick out like a sore thumb. They don't need to be there. I mean, if they are there, then maybe just tone it down, and they're just kind of there to give Quasimodo advice on life. They're not there to be comic relief. I would be okay with that. The comic relief gargoyles is just a really bad fit for the tone that this film is setting for a majority of the runtime. They ruin the tone at times. There are moments where you're really into a scene and you're getting emotionally invested in it, and then comic relief gargoyles. You're like, get out of here. Like, what are you doing here? Get out. Go away. Turn back to stone. I didn't ask for you to be here. That we have a nice emotional scene, and it's serious, and it has some real weight to it, and now you just ruined it. You ruined the moment. What the hell? So I don't like these characters. I don't like, honestly, I don't really care for any of them. There's ones that I like. I guess I could tolerate more. Not going to say like, ones that I can tolerate more than the other, but I still don't like these gargoyles for the most part. And I don't like the goat either that Esmeralda has. That's another extension of just lazy comic relief. And oh, it's a kid's movie, so we gotta have some silly, stupid goat who burps. And apparently this wasn't, from what I've been gathering, this wasn't necessarily in the script. This is stuff that Eisner or Katzenberg decided to add into the movie because, oh, it's not Disney enough. We're making a Disney movie, remember? It's got to be more Disney. And I'm like, no, the whole selling factor, the whole point of this, and from everyone involved, it seemed like, is to make a more mature animated film, to make a movie that has a different tone and a different feel than other Disney films. In essence, kind of do the Disney grunge animated movie. You know, like Disney's take on the grunge movement in the 90s, like counterculture. And I think that would have been a much better route to take, because the goat and the gargoyles and the comic relief stuff, the extra added musical numbers, like this one with the gargoyles and a little bit with the fool in the catacombs, like all of that just comes across like it was just added last minute. And the fact is, it probably was. It was mandated by the guy upstairs at the time because he didn't like the fact that the film that was being made, it was a little bit too serious. It wasn't so comical. It was a little more introspective. It was a little more realistic and raw, and they didn't like that. It scared them, and so they changed a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of things, but they changed things up and added more comic relief and added more musical numbers. And the result is that the movie fails to live up to its full potential. It doesn't ring every bell that it possibly could. In fact, it cracks one of them entirely because it's just trying to force things that it really isn't meant to do. Like, it's not meant to be that kind of film. You can just sense that. I mean, just look at the finale of the movie. Look at scenes like Hellfire. Like, this is not a film that's trying to be or is supposed to be a typical Disney animated film. It honestly would have been interesting if they went all out with it. Like, all right, here's full creative freedom. You want to make a PG-13 Disney animated movie and make it even darker? Go right ahead, because we're all about being grunge. Like, we want to do not necessarily the anti-Disney movie, but we want to make a film that can appeal to teenagers and as well as kids and adults. We want to go a little bit more edgy with this. We want to take some risks, and I would have loved to have seen that. But that's not what we got. Instead, we got a film that is at odds with itself at times, and I don't think it needed to be. And that's what's frustrating about this movie, is that you see a genuine masterwork. You see it, but it never fully comes to fruition because of the fact that it's never really allowed to happen. It's never really allowed to come into play because of the forces that are out of the film's control, because it's all about, the people upstairs and appeasing Eisner and Katzenberg, and I really think they should have took a step back. If it meant that the film made a little bit less money, I don't think that really was necessarily a problem, because this wasn't a time period where Disney was really struggling financially when it comes to their theatrical features. So I feel if it led to a little bit less box office, but it led to it becoming a genuinely iconic and just top tier bit of animation and storytelling, and like one of the best adaptations of this novel to date, I think that honestly would have been the better route to take. But that's just me. Uh, I think the voice cast, for what they were tasked to do, for what they were given, I think for the most part it's some good work. Uh, Mainly, I would say the best performances are from the main three. Tom Hulce is Quasimodo. I've always been a fan of Tom Hulce ever since his days as Mozart and Amadeus, and his role that he had in Parenthood. And it was really nice to see him voice this character and just bring Quasimodo to life in a way that you really didn't see before. The sympathy that you felt for him was so deeper than any of these other adaptations that I've seen of this character, uh, because he did bring a certain innocence to him that I don't really feel that these other actors really brought. And he also had charisma too. So it was a Quasimodo who was also charismatic, and he wasn't always dour and wasn't always sad, and so there it was nice to see a different sort of dynamic with Quasimodo, and I feel that Tom Hulce really did a great job bringing that dynamic to Quasimodo. And he did a great job singing too. I mean, out there, like, that's incredible. That's some really fantastic vocal work. Demi Moore as Esmeralda, I love her take on the character. I think she's very uh, charismatic in her own way, witty. Definitely is somebody you buy as a bit of a badass, honestly. But she can't sing worth a shit, which is why they got Heidi Mollenhauer to do her singing voice, and I think Heidi did a really nice job. But I love Demi Moore in this. It's honestly one of my favorite things that she's done. Because it was really cool to see her stretch her acting muscles and play around with the realm of animation, and it seemed like she was really at home with that. And um, I don't think I've ever really heard her be as charismatic as she is as the voice of Esmeralda in this. Like, this is her at her most charismatic and most engaging. Tony J, tremendous, terrific, chilling. Just a performance for the ages when it comes to his voice as Frollo. Like, I cannot sing enough praises for what he brought to this role. The nuance, just everything about this performance, I love. I adore. I absolutely adore what he brought to this character, and you could tell that he just relished in the opportunity to play this just genuinely just evil sociopathic figure. And it was just, I know it's kind of, I don't know if it would be considered perverse, but it was kind of, it was a pleasure. It was a genuine pleasure to see him portray this character and to bring him to life in such hellish fashion. And he did a great job with the voice work too for the singing, like the Hellfire number, just so fucking good. Kevin Kline was fine as Captain Phoebus, but it was just basically Kevin Kline being Kevin Kline. Uh, the rest of the cast, Paul Kandel as Clopin is okay. The gargoyles, like, I mean, Jason Alexander, I like Jason Alexander. I hated this character. I didn't like this voiceover performance. He was trying way too hard to be funny, and it didn't work for me at all. Charles Kimbrough, Mary Wickes, they were a little bit better, but they were still kind of bland and just in one ear out the other. I know Mary Wickes replaced Cyndi Lauper. Cyndi Lauper was originally considered to voice her character, but they decided to go a different direction, so then they went with Mary Wickes. Mary Wickes, though, she was up there in age, and so this is actually her final acting performance before she died. And she actually wasn't able to finish all the dialogue, so they brought in Jane Withers to provide the rest of the dialogue, and she was okay. And then you also have David Ogden Stiers as the Archdeacon. But really, it's Tom Hulce, Demi Moore, and Tony J. Like, those are the ones that really provide the best voiceover work. Also, the guy who played the fool, like the jester type, the leader of the gypsies. I don't quite know. I'm gonna look it up though, because it's not listed on Wikipedia for some reason, which I think is kind of dumb. But I'm gonna look it up just to see who that is, because I think he deserves a bit more mention, because I thought that was a good voiceover performance as well. Um, yeah, the gargoyles was like Hugo was Jason Alexander. Um, I don't know who the Archdeacon. I guess it's uncredited. Like, it's not even telling me who voiced that character. I think that's kind of lame. No, I can't. I guess I will never know. No, we'll go all cast and crew. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I don't know why it's so hard to find the character. I know Bill Fagerbaki, who voices Patrick Starr. I know he played the voice of a guard in this, and I swear to God, he basically does Patrick here. This is like proto Patrick when it comes to his character, the Oafish guard. I guess Clopin, maybe that's who it is. Paul Kandel. I guess that's who it is. I couldn't necessarily catch exactly what the name of the guy is, but I guess it's Clopin. It's probably that's the most likely scenario. So I liked his voiceover performance. Reminded me a bit of Nathan Lane to the point where I thought that Nathan Lane almost did the voice, but no, it was actually a different performer. But for the most part, pretty good voice cast, just minus the gargoyles. But then again, I can't fully blame them because they got a raw deal. They got some really weak material to work with. The other technical aspects of the film were fine, like the editing by Ellen Kennechay, but the music, I mean, that is another aspect of this film that is just astonishing. Um, I honestly wish I did see this in the theater just to experience the sense of grandeur, the awe of this score. Uh, um, by Alan Menken. My apologies, Alan Menken and Steven Schwartz. Um, because this score, this overall soundtrack, and when it comes to like the songs, other than maybe like a couple bits that were clearly just thrown in there and added due to the desires and the whim of the guy upstairs at Disney. Other than those, all the songs really fit really well with the film and with the flow of the story, and they're catchy. The one that opens up the film, the Bells of Notre Dame, the sequence with the Festival of Fools out there, and of course Hellfire. Like Hellfire, like that is a certified banger for the ages. Like that is a really great song, and just everything about that composition is just great, and just the main orchestral theme for the film just gives me chills every time I hear it. Like it was so good. And yeah, the animation itself is also amazing. It's a great mix of traditional animation as well as some state of the art work for the time in terms of CGI for some of the backgrounds, for some of the camera work. Um, it was one of those instances where you combined techniques that would essentially take over in CGI and animation in that field with the old. So it was a great blend of old and new to create something that I still feel really stands up very well. I think animation wise, this film has some of the most visually stunning and breathtaking sequences that you'll ever see in any Disney movie. So, especially a Disney animated film. And those sequences are honestly one of many reasons why I would recommend this movie, even if you're not really a big fan of animated films or Disney movies. So, yeah, I I would say I'm a fan of this film, but I'm not as big of a fan as I could be. Just needed to just let the film breathe, let the people behind this movie just have the freedom to make the film that they wanted to make and not try to make this movie that's trying to appeal to the widest audience, or a movie that's trying to appeal to the guys upstairs at Disney. Like just allow the creative and just immensely talented people behind this film just do what they feel needs to be done to make this film as good as it could be. And ironically enough, the heads of Disney kind of put this film up in the bell tower instead of just letting it roam free. But still turned out to be pretty effective despite all of the interference. But man, I just I dream of the Hunchback of Notre Dame with all of the people involved with this just being completely unfettered, just being completely allowed to be just as creative, as imaginative as they want to be without anything holding them back, because I think that could have been a genuine masterpiece. I think that could have been an animated film for the ages. But as it is, it's still a pretty good animated movie. Like fire, hellfire, this fire in my skin, this burning desire is turning me to sin.